and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about MBOM behind the scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created MBOM. MBOM helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where MBOM Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy MBOM and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBOM yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the MBOM podcast. I am very excited that you're joining me for today's episode of the show. And today on the podcast, I am thrilled to be joined by Steff Gallante. Steff and I have actually connected twice for my other podcast, Matcha Mornings. We had 2 really wonderful conversations about Ayurveda, which is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So if you are interested in Ayurveda, I would definitely recommend going to check those out over on the Matcha Mornings podcast. And I'm really thrilled to have Steff on MBOM today to talk about her yoga business. And so for those of you who have not heard Steff yet on one of the shows, she is a mental health and trauma-informed yoga teacher, mindfulness and meditation coach, and an Ayurveda wellness guide. And she teaches weekly yoga, meditation, and Zumba classes and uses all of these practices to improve daily wellness and promote long-lasting well-being for herself and her clients. And in this episode of the show, we're talking about her journey with yoga, how she weaved yoga in with her passion for fitness and Ayurveda to create this business that has very diverse offerings that really come together to serve the purpose of helping people feel better in their bodies. She shares what it was like starting her online business just months before the pandemic started, as well as everything that she's learned along the way. So we've got a lot of goodness for you in today's episode of the show, and I'm really excited to dive in. Before we get there, I just wanted to give a little shout out to today's sponsor for the podcast, Offering Tree. Offering Tree is your one-stop shop for all things website, marketing, scheduling, payments, courses, memberships, video on demand, and so much more. And I really cannot stress enough that if you are a yoga teacher or a wellness entrepreneur looking for a solution that is going to be simple for you and your students, as well as affordable, Offering Tree is definitely something that you want to check out. I'm going to tell you more about Offering Tree later on in the episode, but you do have a special link and promo code that gets you a discount if you do want to check them out. It is offeringtree.com/MBOM. All right, we will talk more about Offering Tree later. I am so excited to get into today's episode of the show. And without further ado, here is Steff. Welcome to the podcast today, Steff. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be chatting with you again. And for those listening who are like, again, I've never heard Steff before. I've actually had Steff on my other podcast, Matcha Mornings, twice. We've had two great conversations about Ayurveda, which is a topic very, very near and dear to, I think, both of us, is fair to say. And she's guided us through practices for fall and winter season. So if you're feeling like you need a little bit of that, definitely go check them out. And we'll put links for that in the show notes and stuff. But I'm really thrilled to have you back here and be chatting here again. And also to have you new in this kind of new area of the internet for MBO.
That's my excited but nervous sound.
I love it. Do you want to start by sharing with listeners where you're joining us from today?
I live in central New Jersey, and I'm so excited to be able to connect with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to just dive in kind of a different context. I mean, like I said before, I love talking about Ayurveda. I could talk about that and holistic health and wellness pretty much all day long, but I also love talking about the business side of things. And it was cool as I was learning more about you and your business, just seeing, what you're doing as a mom and like yoga teacher working in Ayurveda. So I want to get into all of that, but maybe let's back up. Can you tell me a little bit about your story with yoga, how you first got into yoga, all that good stuff?
Sure. So I got into yoga probably very similarly to how other people get into it. I wanted to make sure that I had a practice where I was maintaining my flexibility because that's what I thought yoga was. I was probably about 19 years old. I had just started college, and it was my first experience in my entire life of not having organized sports dictate my activity. And so there I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I do for my workouts now that I don't have to be at practice at 3 o'clock every single day? What does that look like to me? And so I had to start exploring that first semester of college, how to move my body and how to be responsible for it. And I had always been an athlete and always danced. And so everything was always dictated for me. I actually didn't even know how to work out on my own. So I found myself, thankfully, in some of the university's fitness classes, and yoga was one of them. And I was like, let me do this. I need to stay flexible, right? I know that that's important in addition to, cardio and strength training. And that is really the stereotypical reason why I got into yoga. If I look back at that, I never could have imagined what the journey would be like and where I would end up literally 20 years later.
Yeah. Your story is so similar to mine. It's actually almost the exact same. Yeah, I was very much the same way. I'd been, a competitive dancer in high school and did other sports and whatnot, kind of, prior to really committing to dance. And I remember getting to university and I was like, the only exercise I get is walking from my dorm room to classes and dancing on the weekends at clubs. Like, but it's like, club. Yeah, but I'm like, I'm drinking alcohol as well. And I'm eating pizza when I get home. So it's not really particularly a healthy lifestyle I'm living here. It's not like I'm going to do some aerobics or anything like that. And I remember going to the gym with a friend and being like, what do people do here?
Right.
Like I actually had no idea how to work out. Same as you.
I can totally identify with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really how I discovered yoga too. And I feel like for me at first, it was very much like the physical practice. I'd love to hear like what your journey with yoga was like kind of from that point. Like how long did it continue to be like the physical practice for you before you recognized like, oh, there's like all these other benefits from yoga and there's a deeper side of yoga than just the asana?
I wish that I could say that I had that aha moment early on. I totally did not. And I guess that's why I also laugh at this whole experience that I'm having now, because I just so did not realize. I was so in the dark. I was so unaware. And so, yeah, I went on and off and practicing as, you do with anything else. And I practiced on and off through undergrad and then through grad school. And my career is in the fitness industry. And so when I was in undergrad and I was getting my psychology degree, I was trying to figure out what in the world I wanted to do with my life. And I knew that I really enjoyed working out. I mean, I always had, as I said, from a young age, just being active. And I really took to when I was in undergrad, working out with my friends, like you were saying, going to the gym and, what motivated me, what didn't motivate me. I loved the group workouts. And so I knew that I wanted to work in fitness. I knew I wanted to, help people working out. That's kind of the aha that I had while I was in undergrad. And so I said to myself, maybe I'm going to start teaching group fitness classes. And so I got certified right at the end of my senior year in college as a personal trainer and a group fitness instructor. And I started very basic with cardio workouts, strength training workouts, and loved it. Loved working, teaching classes and personal training people. It was very fulfilling. And I knew I wanted more. And so when I was in graduate school, I was getting my degree in exercise physiology. And I was lucky enough to be able to have an internship where I was training in the weight room, the varsity athletes. So that was like just so cool. And so I did get my strength and conditioning certification. And I had, like I said, like I've always been so enamored by the human body, by the way the mind works and the connection between, how our mind works for motivation and our behavior, but in the aspect of working out and fitness and athletics. And so I spent quite a few years training athletes as a strength and conditioning coach, and also teaching group fitness and personal training on the side. But then, as I got more and more certifications to teach group fitness, the one thing that I didn't have was yoga, and my own practice started to dwindle, right? I was busy teaching and doing, and everybody or maybe a lot of people who are in the fitness industry can identify. I mean, it's the hustle, right? We're working all the time as often as possible. And I realized like I needed more, grounding for myself. I wanted that connection that I started to get as I practiced more and more on the yoga mat. And so I decided, like, what, maybe I'll try teaching yoga. Let me see how that's going to work out. It's going to increase the amount of people I can reach, the amount of help I can give. And so I went to a weekend training. And I laugh at that now because I'm like, what did I think I was going to learn in a weekend yoga training? But, you have to start somewhere. And it was perfect timing. It was exactly what I needed to learn to shift my career a little bit. And it was such a nice experience to really understand how I could add to training people's bodies in a way that helped them connect deeper to themselves in, tuning in with what their needs were. I mean, this was a very basic yoga certification. It wasn't deeply into awareness of the self, but, there is a piece of that in any yoga teacher training. And so that's how it started. That's how I started teaching yoga, just as a means, honestly, to serve people more, to have an ability to make additional income. And so I did that for a while. And then my career shifted. I was no longer training athletes, and I started working full time in the group fitness industry. I was working as a group fitness manager at the university, and I was overseeing a large fitness program. And I had decided to deepen my studies. I said, the time has come. It was 2009. So what's that, 12 years ago, where I said to myself, there's more here. And I think, honestly, I did it for myself, where I felt I needed, as a person, like as Steff, needed a deeper understanding in how yoga could benefit people, how yoga could benefit me. And that's where that self-realization, that self-awareness, that connection to oneself came through for me, was entering a 200-hour teacher training at a local studio nearby where I live. And I was so thankful because it was at that time called Inner Light Yoga. It's now Smart Asana Yoga. My teacher, Tara, is a former chiropractor. And I loved her style because it was largely based in human anatomy and the way the body works, the physiology of the body. And so that kind of pulled my degree in, right? I have this degree in exercise physiology. How am I going to use it? And also, it was such a wonderful training because it wasn't just about the asana practice. She taught us, deeply about the 8 limbs and all of the pieces of yoga that are so beyond the asana practice. And so that's kind of what my journey has been. I got that certification. I completed it, I believe, in 2010, and was able to really shift the way that I was teaching and teach a practice that was more well-rounded, not just asana, but theming, pulling in themes like things for people to focus on, their energy, their awareness, their maybe even affirmations. It became so much more than just what we do physically on the mat. And it was all about benefiting the whole self. And so I'm so thankful for that process. And then I enrolled subsequently in a 300-hour practice. And so I'm nearly done, or 300-hour teacher training. So I'm nearly done with that. And so it's been such a journey. Wow, 12 years. Incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing that you've been teaching for so long, and very cool to hear that you came from group fitness background before. What was it like kind of integrating yoga with group fitness? Because I feel like while they're kind of often put in the same category, like you think group yoga classes, I do feel like there's like a very different vibe between something like Zumba or like a cardio class or a spin class to like your average yoga class.
So it's interesting. I don't know about anywhere else, but here, especially in the US, there is a marked difference. And let's also talk about how it would, like, I'm talking about pre-COVID times, right? So right now,
Mm-hmm.
even the fitness industry, the gym culture, and the atmosphere is quite different than it was pre-COVID, right? So pre-COVID, there was a very marked difference between yoga that would be held at a yoga studio and yoga in a commercial facility. Um, and I say commercial facility as in, your gyms that, whether it's a franchise or, a standalone gym, if it's a commercial gym where they have a large group fitness program, I would notice that the yoga classes that would be included on the general group fitness schedule would be kind of a watered down. It wouldn't be so much necessarily self-awareness. It would be very much more the asana practice. You would see very popularly, more vinyasa style. So quickly moving classes, and often classes that required a certain level of strength and flexibility and ability. You almost needed an able body. I noticed that in studios, there would be longer classes, so you could explore more, you could take more time, and there would maybe be a little bit more yoga teaching in those classes. I also found that, what I struggled with the most was, I was trained to teach an hour and a half class. And so, in the group fitness world, typically your classes are 45 minutes. You're lucky if you get 60 minutes. And so learning how to adapt your teaching to that time frame was very difficult for me. And I kind of missed that feel of a yoga studio. There is a feel of a group X room, which is not bad. I loved it for other classes, but I found as I deepened my practice, I really liked that traditional feel, that feel of coming home, of being in a place where, I don't know, like I'm trying to put into words the feel of a yoga studio. And it may be different for everyone because I know, not everybody feels the same way about yoga studios. I know for me, and maybe it's just where I was lucky enough to train and to practice, where it was a place where it was very welcoming, very warm, and you had space to be quiet before class. There wasn't, the quick switching pace of a gym. And that's what I liked. And I found myself wanting to do more and more and more of that, wanting to be in that environment and kind of separating my teaching places of like teaching group fitness and using that hat, but then also putting on, my hat of teaching in a place that was, honoring the teachings and the culture of yoga. That was important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I definitely agree with that. I'm curious, like, at what point did Ayurveda kind of come into the mix for you?
I don't know if we have enough time to discuss that, so I'm going to keep that short. I had started my 300 hour long time ago before I had kids. It's been quite a journey. And about 3 years ago, my teacher brought in an Ayurveda yoga specialist training from the Himalayan Institute in Pennsylvania. And I didn't really know much about Ayurveda, I have to be honest. And I was really intrigued by, the description and the topics that were going to be covered. We knew we would be talking about Ayurveda in terms of the mind, meals, how it aligns with yoga and how it can support your yoga practice. I honestly did not know much about it. And when I look back, same as what I said when I started yoga in the first place, I had no idea how enrolling for that training, because it was optional. It was not a required part of our 300 hour. I had no idea how transformative that experience would be. And I had no idea how timely it would be. And to set the stage for you, I walked into that first training with Catherine Templeton, who is just incredible in all of her teaching, and loves her from the moment because she's a psychotherapist who is also an Ayurvedic teacher and practitioner. And so that is the ultimate union between Western and Eastern medicine, if you ask me. And so it was so cool to come from a psychology background and knowing, Western medicine doesn't always accommodate or view Eastern medicine or spiritual medicine as something that is real. And so I was so intrigued by this person who is trained and has done so much work in Western medicine and psychotherapy, but also pulls in teachings of Ayurveda with her clients. I mean, how incredible is that? So I remember texting my husband 20 minutes, I'm not going to lie, 20 minutes into the first meeting that I had with the group, saying to him, this probably in all caps, because, I even yell in text messages, right? I'm very excited. This is where I'm meant to be. I felt so strong that all the steps I had taken in my career was to lead me to that. And the reason is because things just started to click. It started to make sense. Just simply the introduction of what Catherine was telling us we would learn and why it was important to understand this information. I couldn't believe how I was feeling. And again, more background for me. At that time, my youngest son was 2. And after my pregnancy with him, I developed a bunch of health issues, digestive issues that I never had. I had grown up with a few digestive issues. That's that Vata imbalance, right? But I was really struggling. I wasn't able to eat a lot of foods that I normally could eat. And that could have been the effect of hormones. And my sons are 2 years apart. So, I spent 3 years of my life being pregnant, nursing, birthing babies, growing babies, the whole thing. And really almost 4 years then after I nursed Quincy. So it could have been hormonal, but it also could have been stress, because at that time I was working a very demanding full-time job, trying to balance. What does that mean anyway? Balance being a mom, being a wife, and then also Steff in the process. I was really struggling, and self-care was not on the table for me. I was trying to do what I needed to do to nourish this human I was feeding, or had just finished feeding, and now, was putting myself back together. I had 2 C-sections. I just was very unwell. I was very unwell physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically, and also was navigating grief. We had lost my aunt recently. And so I felt as though, now looking back, I don't think I realized at the time, but now I think all the challenges that I had gone through in my life kind of came to a head. And this training, learning about Ayurveda, about how the elements of nature play into your body's characteristics, your physiology, your physical characteristics, your mental characteristics, emotional characteristics, Oh my gosh, it opened up a whole new world of understanding for me because, part of my experience in life has been through racism and discrimination. I grew up not being confident at all, questioning myself and my self worth. And leading up to the Ayurveda training, the transformative experience I had on the yoga mat was very much that self love in honoring yourself and accepting yourself. And that deepened as I found Ayurveda, because Ayurveda, this training in particular, was centered on Ayurveda self care practices in aligning Ayurveda with yoga in your teachings, the way you sequence classes, in understanding the changes of nature and how to create balance within yourself. And that understanding of what self love means, to turn up for yourself each day, even when it's hard, to prioritize your well being, even as you're serving others, because it goes against what American society says. And I'm sure society in other countries as well, of, we've got to run ourselves into the ground and put ourselves last, especially people who identify maybe as women, as wives and mothers. Oftentimes we are putting ourselves last. And I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it. I was suffering and my family was suffering. And Ayurveda gave me the tools to reprioritize my life and get myself well again, so that, and part of what Ayurveda helps us to do and supports us with is to have better digestion, both of food and drinks, but also the way we experience the world. Oh my gosh. I mean, I could go on and on about this. The way I was able to heal through these practices of seasonal eating, of understanding my tendencies and my characteristics and what I needed to do to create balance, was huge. It was hard because it went against a lot of things that I was taught from American culture. It went against American eating and lifestyle, but it makes sense, right? Living in tune with nature, with the cycles of the sun and the day and the moon, and, um, you know, listening to yourself, being very intuitive, not being so busy that you can't hear what your body is telling you. That has been for me. So really, the work I do now is because of the experience I've had as a practitioner through yoga, through meditation, breath work, and then these self-care practices. It's through my own healing that I realize, oh my gosh, more people need this. More people need this for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like I can relate a lot to that discovery of Ayurveda and just feeling so like enthralled by it and like, wow, this makes so much sense to me and has had such an impact in my life too. But, really just being able to bring everything together. And I think, I'm a big fan of like fitness, moving our bodies, whatever you like to do to kind of get yourself moving. But I think in our society, we also have these like severe imbalances, like you were
Mm-hmm.
saying. And I think that sometimes we're just programmed to like go, go, go. Like I need to run further and faster and I need to lift heavier and more. And sometimes that's not what we need. And I think that that's one of the really beautiful things that both yoga and Ayurveda can really teach us. And I think it's really wonderful to be able to bring all these different kind of passions you have together, like to bring the Ayurveda in with the yoga, with the group fitness, and, create something magical out of it, really.
I feel so blessed. It's so funny because, my career really has taken twists and turns. And I say to everyone, I'm where I never imagined I would be. I honestly, I never knew what I wanted to do, except for that I wanted to help people. I wanted people to maybe not love, but enjoy movement as much as I do. And what we know, what research tells us about health and well-being is that we must move our bodies. Our bodies are machines. They're made to move, right? They're made to. They're not made for us to beat up on them, right? They're made for us to treat the same way we do cars or the things we own, right? Our bodies are meant to be taken care of, but they're meant to move. And we also know from research, what scientists are telling us, that there is a clear connection between movement, healthy movement, and mental health and mental well-being and emotional well-being. And I know for me, um, it's hugely supportive, and strength training can support you in ways that cardio can't, and vice versa. And then our yoga practice. I mean, each different type of exercise brings something to the table in terms of how our body is bettered and how it's supported. And then you also have, meditation and breath work. I don't often say absolutes, but I do believe everyone should move their body in a whatever way feels good to them, that honors them. And I also believe everybody should breathe and meditate. Those are my absolutes. But I agree with you. It's such a blessing to have so much experience in different areas of the fitness and wellness industry, and be able to pull them together in a weird but beautiful way for people to enjoy and better themselves. I feel really blessed. I feel so lucky to be able to do this, and for people to trust me on this wild journey that I create for them. I feel really blessed.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing to hear. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about and maybe we can do like pre-pandemic and then pandemic, since obviously things have probably shifted and stuff. But since you have so many different aspects of your business, and I know it's shifted over time, what are kind of all the things that you were doing pre-pandemic? Like, how was your business sort of structured and set up?
It's funny that you ask. I left my full-time job in August 2019. I I was at a place where I needed to prioritize my well-being. I felt called to do different work. I loved my job. I loved so much of what I was doing, but I had this, I guess, this intuition that I was meant to utilize the training that I had, my experiences, in a different way. And so I left my full-time job to prioritize my well-being, to put myself back together from this place where I didn't feel well in any way. And who knew that, what, 4, 5, 6 short months later, we would be in the midst of a pandemic. And so when I left my job, I really honestly, some people say I was brave, other people say I was reckless. I maybe it was a little bit of both. I don't know. But I left my job. I didn't have a plan. My plan was just to put me back together, because I knew that's what I needed, and that's what my family needed. And then I was saying to myself, okay, so how am I know I want to help people. How am I going to do it? And, close friends of mine had said, Steph, maybe you start your own business. It's going to be hard, but if anyone could do it, it's you. And I was like, really? That's a big vote of confidence. And so I decided, let's do it. And so my intention was to be able to teach yoga classes, to teach workshops. I love to teach workshops for different groups, whether it's companies or, groups within companies. I had done, quite a few wellness workshops in my old job, and I really loved it, whether it was about just, simple yoga exercises you could do at your desk, or breathing or meditation that you could do at work or even at home, of course. But I really enjoyed that. And so I said, maybe this is something I could do. I think more and more people are needing this. Who knew how much it would be needed? And so when I did start my business, everything was virtual. I was doing some things in person, but I did have the ability to do things virtually. And then January of 2020, I began, teaching some yoga and meditation classes virtually. And then the pandemic. So had to scramble, because I was no longer going to be teaching workshops live, like in person. So had to shift that to online offerings, and being support, knowing that really now everybody was realizing they needed to meditate, they needed to breathe, they needed ways to relieve stress, but also take care of themselves in hugely unprecedented times. And so I began doing things I never thought I was going to be doing. I never thought I would be offering workshops online. I never thought that I would be, reaching out to different companies and teaching for different, just different entities. Things unfolded in a way I never could have imagined, in a beautiful way. There was a lot of loss. There were a lot of contracts that fell through that I know a lot of the industry did feel. But I'm thankful that through the years of teaching, at the university, I get to see, because people are there for a short time, I was able to make a lot of connections and a lot of friendships and relationships with people that are now all over the country and in different parts of the world. And, all of a sudden, these people then were saying, well, are you going to teach Zumba? I know you're teaching yoga and meditation, but what about Zumba? And that was born out of necessity. I had, when I started my business, was really focusing on yoga, meditation, mindfulness, breathing tools. Zumba really wasn't going to be a part of it. And then there was the need. And so I said, okay, let's do it. And wouldn't you know, people showed up. And it was just such a blessing, to be in a time when, yes, people need that yoga, breathing, meditation for all of the self-awareness that it provides and all of the calming and focusing and relief it provides. But people really wanted that ridiculous foolishness of Zumba, the music, the joy, even in their own homes. And what a blessing it was to connect with people that way. I feel just so thankful for people asking me to do it, for showing up. And so that has continued. So things were very weird. I feel like month to month, I was continuing to adjust and pivot and change up my offering based on where we were within the pandemic and what were people needing at that time, because it was truly unprecedented. And I think we got to a point where people were like, I don't even know what I need, stuff. Right. So I had to kind of just go on my intuition of what I was seeing, what I was hearing from people, and create offerings based on that. What was the feel of society right now, and how could I offer maybe just a glimmer of hope, a little glimmer of light in the darkness? And so that intuition that has always driven me, and sometimes annoyingly so, where I'm like, okay, intuition, calm down, be quiet. But I was so grateful for it. And maybe that's why I went through all the work I did in, beginning to heal mentally, physically, based on trauma and all that. Not to say that I'm done healing, but maybe that's why I did all of it. I was reflecting as I hit the 2-year anniversary this year of my business, of reflecting on how wild the ride has been. I mean, who starts a business 4, 5, 6 months before a pandemic? And, I can't believe what I have experienced. Again, grateful seems empty, but, now I just feel so lucky to be able to serve people this way, in a way that helps them to human better, to show up better for themselves. And pulling in, like you were saying before, all these different things that I love so much that I use for my own healing. I find people say to me, gosh, Steff, like you have said to me too, you do so many different things. And I guess I kind of do, when you look at it from the outside, it does look like a lot of different things, but to me, they're all connected. And the reason is because if you take Ayurveda, the focus of Ayurveda is whole being healing, which requires a deep awareness of yourself. That really is what it entails. It's very difficult for somebody to heal with Ayurveda if they're not tuned in. And it's that is the focus of yoga, of meditation and breathing. It's mindfulness, right? That awareness of yourself in the moment, of your needs and shifts that you need to make in order to restore balance and create harmony within yourself. And then Zumba comes into play because Ayurveda also tells us that we need to enjoy life, that we need to have different experiences. We must laugh. We must have joy. Even on the darkest days, we have to bring in some light. Even if it's not completely authentic, we still have to lean in that direction at times. And so for me, it actually is all connected in a very beautiful, odd way. And so there are really 3 main ways that I connect with, or maybe 4, maybe there's more. Let's count them. So, I connect with my community with one-on-one services. I connect with them via workshops, whether that's workshops that I hold for my community or whether that is being contracted to the outside for businesses and schools. live stream classes that I hold weekly, some are special monthly, and also courses both digitally and virtually. I've been trying to create offerings that meet people where they are, both geographically, but also in their capacity. Some people need the accountability of showing up one on one. Some people don't want one on one, they're not ready for that, or they just want a group interaction. And some people, either they're not in my time zone or, they want to be able to tune in with me at their leisure. And so I've tried to be very intentional with the offerings in giving people options of the ways that they can work with me that suits them. And so that's another kind of beautiful journey that I've taken in these last 2 years.
Yeah. Wow. So much good stuff. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I think it's really, I think it's really cool that you started your business right before the pandemic. And I really don't think that anyone knew this was coming. So there was really no way to predict that, right? I think that probably earlier in 2019 was better than maybe March 1st of 2020. So at least you had that going for you. But I think it's really cool that you decided to start your business online right off the get-go, because then there was probably less pivoting. Am I right with that?
Yes, I was lucky. Yep.
Hey, yoga teachers. We're just taking a quick break from the podcast to talk a little bit more about Offering Tree. If you've been teaching yoga classes for a while, the first step to leveling up your business is creating a membership. But if you're teaching online, it's not so easy to use punch cards or in-studio systems to track your memberships. That's why I love recommending Offering Tree. With Offering Tree, you can create memberships in the same place where you sell classes or on-demand courses. With memberships on Offering Tree, you can offer perks like access to a video library, discounted or free classes, and a whole bunch of other benefits. To access member benefits, all your students have to do is log into your site. Of course, we always want things to be very simple for us on the back end and the administrative side of things, but even more importantly than that, we want things to be simple for our students. And with the Offering Tree platform, everything is super simple, both for you as well as for your students. Now, memberships aren't the only thing you can do on Offering Tree. It's an all-in-one business platform that makes it easy to sell classes, videos, courses, and memberships all in one place. You can design a website with Offering Tree and start accepting payments in 30 minutes. I'm not even joking you. It's really that easy. Or if you already have a website you love, you can easily embed their tools on your platform. And the best part is, MBOM listeners get a special discount. Head on over to offeringtree.com/MBOM to get your special discount. That's offeringtree.com/MBOM. All right, now back to the show. Yeah. What kind of drew you to starting your business online? Because while I feel like there was certainly opportunity in a market for, teaching these types of things online, I feel like it just wasn't, I guess, as common as it is now. I mean, everyone's pretty much doing all their stuff online now. And I feel like, that's kind of here to stay when it comes to fitness and yoga. But what kind of drew you to hey, I'm going to do this online instead of in person?
Well, I was lucky. I had maybe for 2 years prior to that, had been teaching for an online studio called VFit Studio. And they offer solely online fitness classes. And so I had been teaching online for a couple of years. And so I had the experience already. And as I was saying, working at the university at Rutgers, when students are there, whether they're in undergrad or grad school, they're only there usually from anywhere between 4, 6, maybe 7 years. If you're talking, people who are doing their PhD or something like that. And then they end up, leaving. They go wherever the job is, and they're spread all over the country. And I said to myself, if I'm building a business, because the service is me, right? It's not like I'm putting out a product. I am the product. I'm probably going to have the best bet starting by serving the people who I know. And in order to do that, I would have to be able to offer things virtually. I wasn't opposed to doing things in person. And I did do quite a few things in person, but I said to myself, I want to be able to reach, if they're open to it, the people who I know who are spread all over the country in different parts of the world. And that was really my driving force, was to create, you know, to utilize those connections, and not in like a skeevy way, but in a way of, hey, this is what I'm doing. In case you might need this, this is where you can meet me. And so that felt really good because, I don't do the whole, sales thing very well. I thought, okay, a comfortable place to me will be to start with the people that I know. How can I serve them? How can I show up for them in a way that supports them in their own well-being journey? And so that's why I decided to do it virtually, in terms of the classes and some of the different offerings, was to be able to serve those people who I cared so much about, but who didn't live here. I mean, I have my family spread across different parts of the US and in different countries. And so to be able to offer that to them was a big driving force.
Yeah, amazing. That definitely makes sense. And I feel like what a what a blessing to have started your business online and not have had to pivot in the way that many people did. So I think that that's really cool to hear that, and just hear kind of, how it came to be and how you've just kind of put all of this stuff together based on, what your students need and how you see things fit. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about, some of the big business lessons that you've learned throughout your whole journey with yoga, your whole journey as a business owner?
So I have a few, but the number one lesson I have learned is the most important thing is authentic connection. And that is to yourself as well as to your community. There is nothing that is more important than that. You have to be totally and completely connected to yourself in a way where you can be authentic, you can be vulnerable, you can call yourself out on your own BS, and also connect in those same ways with your community. Because for me, again, because I'm the service, right? I'm the one that they are contracting. It's me teaching them, it's me guiding them. It's me that they are signing up to do yoga with and to have a very vulnerable experience with, right? They have to know that I'm showing up authentically. And that is also meaning transparent. I have to be transparent in where my struggles are and where my work is. And I find that when I am completely transparent, that's when I'm creating that authentic community and that authentic connection to people. And so I think it's important to not be who you think people want you to be or who society is telling you to be, right? I'm huge in disrupting the status quo, both, me personally, in terms of, like I said, what well-being is, what American society or society in general says well-being is, and also who has access to being well, right? So showing up for marginalized groups and allowing marginalized groups to have access to the same opportunities as those who have the privilege. So for me, authentic connection is huge, both, again, to myself, to my community, and the ways that I serve, and the ways that I make what I do accessible to all the groups, especially those who are marginalized. I think that that's really important.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that's definitely a really big business lesson that I think a lot of us are, learning and processing and seeing how we can implement in our own businesses right now. And I think it's definitely something important to be mindful of, really.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many ways that you can create connection with people. And, one thing I'm learning is that intention doesn't always translate, right? We could be well intended for something, but we also have to be aware of our biases, our judgment. We have to be aware of our privilege. That's a big piece of your authentic connection to yourself and to the community, and a piece of the 8 limbs, right? That self-study is hugely important. And I think that for me, showing up authentically, that self-study for me has been the biggest guiding light and also the biggest factor in terms of creating authentic connections with people. I think it's number one for sure, hands down, the biggest lesson I've learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that creating that connection with people in your community is it's huge. I mean, that's like what we're doing as yoga teachers and as business owners, is holding space for community, really.
It really is. And, for me, for the style of yoga that I teach, I'm calling people immediately from the time we start, from the time we go into our focusing and breathing. I'm saying to them, I need you to connect with yourself. What do you need right now? Do you need to be lying down? Do you need to be seated? Do you need to be standing? What do you need to do right now to create a shape that allows you to connect to yourself? And throughout the yoga practice, right? I'm honoring, what season we're in, and bringing in the asanas that create the balance. But I'm also throughout the practice asking them, what do you need right now? Is this hand placement? Is this particular positioning honoring what you need? Connect to yourself more deeply. We're talking about affirmations and words that raise our energy vibrations. We're breathing through, we're doing all those things so that we can better connect to ourselves, because the better we can connect to ourselves, the better we can connect to our community. We don't close ourselves off. We can be more vulnerable and really understand, what is our purpose here? How can I serve my community? How can I uplift them? It's that community. Even though Ayurveda and yoga is so about the self, it's at the root of that, though, is community, right? The community that we create and connecting to our community. And so bringing that, shedding that light and having that constant awareness on ourselves, but with the intention of connecting more deeply to others, and uplifting others, especially those who have been marginalized, is really the root of all my work.
Amazing. I love that. Did you have some other business lessons you wanted to share?
Yes, for sure. Trust your gut. Trust that intuition. You know your calling better than anyone else. And yes, we all need coaches. We all need guides, for sure, 100%. But that intuition will not lead you wrong in terms of who you choose to be your guide, and how you choose to run your business. Because there are all kinds of models out there. And there are the models that will tell you how to get 1 million followers in 2 days, and how to get, your first course to sell for $10,000. But is that in alignment with you? Right? Is that in alignment with what you feel called to do? Right? And maybe that is your vibe, and all power to you. But if it's not, understanding that there's not anything wrong with you, and that the work you want to do and the way that it feels good to you, you must listen to that. Because if you're building your business around something that means something to you, you have to build it on a sturdy foundation of practices that feel good to you, and that honor what you're calling and what your intention is, and the vibe that you want to create for your business. So you have to trust your intuition. You have to let that guide you. And in that, honoring the process. So here's the third one, honoring the process and the long game. I am not patient. I'm telling you, when I was created, when I was born, patience were gone. Everyone else that came before me that day got all the patience, and I got none. And so I am totally immediate gratification, immediate, yesterday, or tomorrow. It's just, it needs to happen today, right now. And I don't have patience for the long game. You have to have faith in yourself. If you believe in God or the universe or more than one God or whoever it is you believe in, whatever it is that you believe in, you have to trust that the process is working. That even though you can't see the success happening, even though you cannot see all the connections being made, they're being made. You have to trust your work. You have to trust what it is that you're doing and how you're showing up, and understand that this is the long game. That even if you do experience success right off the bat, if you're in it for the long haul, then you got to honor the long game. And so trusting the process, honoring the process in the long game is going to be very important. And then I have 3 more that I'll go over quickly. The comparing game only affects you. and not the way you want it to.
It's true.
You can't,
It's very
you
true.
can't compare. Yeah. You can't compare yourself to others in anything. And I think probably for me, that's been one of the greatest gifts of Ayurveda, right? In understanding yourself, like your makeup. And even if, let's just say, you are Vata dominant and so am I, well, the way that your Vata dominance shows up is different from the way it shows up in me. And so you could have the same dosha dominance as somebody else in your family or someone else you know, but your tendencies, your abilities are going to be different. And so you can't compare yourself in terms of any characteristics, and you can't compare yourself in terms of other people's business. Even if someone started the business right when you did, even if they started it after, you cannot compare. The way you go about doing your business is going to be different than other people. And that's okay. And people are on different places in their journey, right? Like it's not linear. And the journey doesn't have to be parallel. So the comparing game only affects you and not the way you want it to.
Very true. Very true. That's a good one. Thank you for that.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And then the last two are, the number one is be flexible and adaptable, right? That's what the pandemic has showed us. That's been one of the greatest lessons is being flexible and adaptable, changing what you need. It's good to know what you know and be an expert in what you know, but you also have to be able to change because everything is changing. Life was always changing, and now even more. And you have to be able to adapt what it is that you do to serve your people best. And in order to show up for them in the way that they need, you've got to be flexible and you have to be adaptable. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be able to take criticism. You have to be able to accept your mistakes, because that's all part of the process, right? Mistakes don't mean failure. Mistakes just mean you're learning. And you've got to be able to adapt and be flexible to what the people you are serving need. And also for yourself, because this is my last tip. The grind does not work. Period. There's a big period on that. The grind doesn't work. And we know that in life, we must prioritize our self-love and our self-care and boundaries. And that also has to be done within our business. Whether it's in your business practices, in the way that you serve your community, but also in the way that your business connects with your own life as a person. You must stop that grind mentality, because if you are developing ideas, if you're being creative, you need space and time. You need freedom. And while maybe we've been conditioned by society that we must grind it out, we know that we only suffer by that, and we don't put out our good work that the world needs with that grind mentality. And so don't bother with it. Self-care, self-love your way through your personal life and your business life. And maybe that might be slower, but hey, we're in the long game, right? So it'll be better in the end for sure.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really great one to finish up on. And I'm just a really big fan of just getting away from this like hustle culture. Just like, I don't know when it became like cool to work like 14-hour days or whatever people are doing these days. And just like, we only get this one kind of life on this planet that we kind of know of. And obviously, there's lots of beliefs around that. And I personally feel like we've lived other lives and that type of thing, but it's like, we get this like one conscious time on the planet. And I'm such a fan of finding careers and ways to make money to sustain us that we love. Yet we don't have to spend all of our time doing that. We can spend time with ourselves and our family and our friends and doing the other things that we love to do.
Oh, yes. 100% to that. Yes.
And taking care of ourselves. That's pretty important. Amazing. This has been such a wonderful conversation, Steff. I feel like I could just keep you here all day and just continue chatting, but time to wrap up. So can you share with listeners where they can go to learn more about you, find you, follow along with all the stuff you have going on?
For sure. So on Instagram, you can find me at Steff Gallante. That's STEFF GALLANTE. On Facebook, it's Steff Gallante Self-Care. And my website is steffgallante.com. So I would love to hear from all of you. And I'm so appreciative for your time and your energy and just creating space in time in your day to listen along. And thank you, Amanda, for having me. It's just so lovely to be able to connect with you. And I appreciate this time so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the show. All right. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Steff Gallante. Make sure you go check her out. Make sure you check her out on Matcha Mornings and learn more about Ayurveda. As well, we continued this conversation on MBM Behind the Scenes. We talked about her self-care practices and some of her top tips for self-care. So one of the big things within Steff's business is her self-care practice and helping others with self-care. And so I thought I would pick her brain on how she maintains that and what her top tips are. So for $10 a month, you can get access to this episode as well as all other episodes. We've got almost 60 episodes in the vault, and you get access to all of that for just $10. So you can head out over to patreon.com/MBM yoga. I would love to see you there. And of course, a big thank you to today's sponsor, Offering Tree. Make sure you go check them out, offeringtree.com/MBOM. If you have any questions about Offering Tree, make sure you're reaching out to myself or the team at Offering Tree. We're always happy to help to see if it's a good fit for you. And thank you for listening to this episode of the show. I really, really appreciate it. I always appreciate the emails that you send me and, the DMs on social media and the shares on social media, questions, comments, all that good stuff. So thank you so much to you for listening to the show, and I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.